Welcome to Shorty SuperCoach. What's going on, guys? Hope you guys are well. Another preview, taking a look at the Pies, and there are some definitely relevant options at Collingwood this year that I want to take a look at. There's not too many, but I think the few that I do talk about are very, very relevant. But yeah, I'm very happy to be counting down the days at Coles. I started bright and early this morning. It was absolutely brutal. And yeah, funny thing happened towards the end of the day. I was unloading the van, and this one bloke, Steve's always onto me about the shoes that I wear, and it's fair enough. It's fair enough. I should have replaced these shoes probably 6 months ago. In fact, I'll see if I'll probably be able to show you. They're absolute trash. So this is what we're talking when I talk about how bad these shoes are. You know, visually not overly appealing, but look at this. Look at this sort of action. Terrible. So he's always at me about the shoes, and I'm always like, Steve, it is what it is, mate. He's been banging on about it hard. He's like, I hope Sanders bringing you some new shoes, mate. And like, it's kind of been awkward because I knew I'd be looking for a new job, and I was kind of thinking, well, I'm not going to buy some new shoes if I'm going to be out of this job in about a month. And it's turned out well for me because I did find another job. So therefore, all these shoes can just hang in there for another month, which is handy. But he goes to me, your shoes are so shit, mate. They're awful. You don't look after them. He's like, you don't have a girlfriend, do you? I said, whoa, Steve. I was like, no, I don't, actually. And then he goes, you're not gay, are you? I was like, whoa, Steve. It's 2022, bro. Can't be saying that sort of shit. What if I am? Something wrong with that, Steve? Come on. I was like, shit. He's just like, middle-aged dude, meant absolutely no harm by it. But I was like, whoa, fuck. I'm sleep deprived, bro. I wasn't ready for that sort of a comment. But yeah, gee, sore spot. We get it, Steve. Shorty's single. Gosh. I'm just trying to find some love out there, Steve. Give me a break. Anyway. Let's dive into, well, before we dive into Tommy Mitchell, I wanted to start with a couple of guys that will not feature today, and they won't feature in our teams, or at least I don't think they should, but they were very relevant in previous years because of dual position. So it's the death of Jack Crisp and Jordan De Goey. They are both midfielders only. Last year we could get Crisp as a defender and De Goey in the forward line, and both had respectable years. You know, probably both had their frustrations at times. But that is the death of them as selections now, losing that dual position. You hate to see it, but we probably knew it was coming. Tommy Mitchell, massive fan of Tom Mitchell and what he can do, but he is limited. There's no doubt about that. He's a limited footballer now. He's slow. I think particularly after the knee, his ability to spread did suffer a touch. But what he does do well is that winning the inside contested pill. Does it beautifully well. I'll touch on that a bit more in a second, but let's have a look at these numbers. I mean, look at that. Outstanding stuff from 2017 to 2021. You got a Brownlow in there, dominator for the Hawks, doing fantastic stuff. Now, we saw last year Hawthorn change tact, change coach, and the ability for Mitchell to just be that inside mid, every centre bounce, all the stoppages, that became not so much his go. They were giving opportunities to younger blokes, and fair enough. It's fair enough. It's part of what happens, that transitioning of a team. But Mitchell's footy was not a beneficiary of that. So we saw him throughout the whole year really struggle for that consistency, and we saw him still have those big games. He did have big games. It was probably only a few, to be fair. But I mean, look at some of these numbers. You know, he'd never score a 78 or a 40. You know, just regular 80s is just something that he wouldn't do. The numbers don't look too bad on the surface because he's still getting 30 most of the time. But I've got a feeling that if we look at his numbers, his contested ball count might have gone down. Wouldn't be surprised if his tackles went down as well. But nonetheless, his role definitely changed. I know at times he was starting at a half-forward flank and pushing up to the stoppage. Just not his go. Let's have a look at the numbers can back me up. Contested ball was definitely down. I mean, even though the possession count looked good from his lofty standards of 21, his possession count dropped drastically. as we can see, well, that's a fantastic... I was referencing the kicks, thinking they were contested balls, so that's a great example there. Let me go to the advanced stats. So he definitely won a lot less of the ball, which is key to Mitchell. He does need a lot of the ball to hurt you, but he is very capable of doing that. So there you go. Numbers absolutely proving me incorrect. He actually had a bit more of a closer 50-50 split in terms of the way he won his ball, as opposed to often finding a lot more uncontested ball on the spread. So, all right, my initial instinct there was wrong. But we cannot argue that Mitchell was pushed out of the centre bounce, didn't have as key of a role in Hawthorn's midfield, and that sort of sees him at the Pies. So not only does it see him at the Pies, but also sees him at a pretty nice price, given that average of 96 is so under what we've seen from him for 6 or 7 years. Does he make his way into your team? I think he should be right there in the mix. To be honest, I'd say for me, yeah, he's a strong consider. And I did my team picker the other day, and he's in my team. You know, you can't always be spending 600k on absolutely every player or every premium. So sometimes you got to find a bit of value somewhere. And I guess the option would be, do I go a Tom Mitchell or maybe someone that I think's a breakout contender like a Tom Green? And I guess that's a discussion for another day. I think they're both awesome options, and you could potentially have both. But what we know with Mitchell and what we know with Collingwood is they both need the ability to get inside there and win the hard ball. And probably Taylor Adams has been that man for a while, but even he's dropped off, a lot of injury issues. I just think Mitchell has been recruited for that exact role. He's going to be in there winning heaps of the pill, feeding it out to those slightly more outside types, but those finishing types like Crisp, DeGoey, Daicos, even Pendlebury. So I think you even see Pendle skirt around a bit more and be more of a distributor. So I think there's a role there for Mitchell to get back to just 30 touches a game, 110 average in SuperCoach. He's still only 29, so there's no reason that his best football's behind him. I think an average around that 110, 112 is very, very possible. And at this stage, he is thoroughly in the mix for a spot in my midfield. Next up, we'll take a look at Darcy Cameron, and he's a fellow that I didn't really think was on the radar, probably just because I didn't really think about it. But of course, I mean, Brodie Grundy goes. It makes absolute sense that Cameron, who was a fantastic option last year and one that I got very much wrong. You know, I was slow to the party, and then I thought, well, I've missed the boat. Grundy's eventually coming back. I won't jump on board. Well, Grundy basically never came back consistently, and Cameron was the beneficiary. You know, he averaged 84, but the numbers were even better for the most part. I mean, he had a stretch there from, say, round 7 basically through to round 20. I mean, there was a bit of a slower period, couple of 70s, 45 and a 64 towards the end of the year. But this period through here was just fantastic. Barely went under 90. In fact, he didn't for a good solid 8-9 weeks or whatever that is. So clearly relishes being the number one ruck, and he's going to get that without Grundy. He is obviously unders in terms of price because of that. We've sort of got a bit of the season where he was the main man, which showed us what he could do, but he did have some other affected scores where he wasn't at his best, or just sharing a bit of that ruck duty. So I think he's a pretty viable option. I think it's definitely not the year to go Gordon and Grundy, given they are playing alongside each other and will, of course, impact each other's scores. In which way, who knows? But this is the first time where we're really having to think a bit different with our ruck situation. And Cameron has to come into consideration. I mean, I did my team picker the other day. I was looking at someone like Rowan Marshall and Tim English. I think, really good options as well. But Cameron has to be considered. He has to be. He's definitely a bloke that had some really nice scores. And he can win a bit of the ball as a big guy. He roams around, gets plenty of hit-outs. He's consistently around that 15-touch mark with a few are a bit down. But, he even played some really nice finals, which is always good to see as well. So I'd have him right there in the players to consider for you. He's at a really handy price and will be the number one ruck. I think he'll relish it. So definitely a bloke to really consider. And who would have thought he was 27? I would not have thought that. He's obviously been one of these big blokes that takes a while, but he's going to get his chance now. Nick Daicos. This is the bloke that is referenced in the title. No surprises. Second-year player. he's about a lock for me. He really is. Now, I know the first thing you'll say is second-year blues. I'm not sure I'm an absolute believer on it. I sort of see him in the Sam Walsh mould. You know, they're just ready-made for AFL footy straight out of the draft, and they just continue to dominate. And we haven't seen the second-year blues as much as I think we have, if that makes sense. I reckon it's something we throw around a lot, and we fear that it'll happen, but these people are professionals, and Daicos is going to be a star of the future. I mean, there's no second-year blues for Walshy. I know he's playing midfield and that type of thing, but who's to say Daicos can't get some midfield numbers? And even if he's at half-back, he can still dominate. I want to say, someone else who's ready-made for the game, like Clayton Oliver. I don't think this will be as good of a reference because I think he might have only averaged 75 in his first year. 70, but then, boom, no second years about that. It was a second-year explosion. Daniel Rich is a guy that had a really good first year. I know we're going back a bit, but Rich played midfield that first year. I'll be interested to see. So he is probably an example of the second-year blues. He probably didn't back it up, but we, of course, saw him go from a bit of a midfielder to more of a half-back flanker. His career took a bit of a different trajectory. But, look, we could pull examples here and there of why he might have second-year blues and why he might not. But I just see it as all upside for me. I just think this bloke is one of the best decision makers in the game already. He's only going to get better. And to average 91 in his first year, God, it's ridiculous. And look, really nice finals too. A couple of 90s, 76, but it's just some of the decision making he had against Geelong was ridiculous. Some of the kicks he bites off. There's a lot of the Caleb Daniels about it. So I'm comfortable for him to play half back and still average around 95, maybe more. He showed an ability to get a lot of the ball, and at this stage of the year, second half of the year, people were talking about tagging him, a bloke who's played about 17 games. Now, what he will be looking to improve, and this might come with natural development or a different role or more chance through the midfield, but that's his contested ball. He's very much an outside player, which is totally fine at this stage of his career, but that is one area where he will need to improve, and he might be a good contested ball winner. I don't know. It might have just been the role that he had to play. But, to only win it 6 times in comparison to 17 on the outside, you look at that, ranks 6th for total uncontested possessions, effective touches, he's right up there too. But it sort of shows his game. Halfback, flanker, distributor. I just think he's only going to get more responsibility in the Collingwood side. And I just think he'll go from strength to strength. I see 90 as the worst case scenario, and I can see him averaging around 100. So, looking at some of the other options in the back line, there's a lot of really good guys, particularly around the 600k. I think Daicos could be every bit as good as them. I mean, this isn't just some guy who had a really hot year, first year. This is a fellow who's touted as potentially one of the best players over the next decade, and we saw it. So, I think it's only going to be up from here. Doesn't seem like he'll shy away from the pressure that comes with his name and the expectations. So I reckon he's a gun, and I'm right on board picking Daicos in my back line. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, particularly all three of these guys. I think every one of them, you could have all three or you could have none of them. At the moment, I had 2. So I'd really like to see where you land with them. How many of these guys do you have? Do you reckon I missed anyone as well from the Pies? Hopefully I've covered everyone you think is relevant. But, I thought there wasn't... it's more quality over quantity. I think these are 3 genuine selections, but probably not as much going on at the Pies. So let me know your thoughts. I'll be back with another preview pretty soon, and I'll chat to you then. Cheers.